Residential tech talk, lighting specialist to residential
smart house.
All right, we are back on the Residential Tech Talks podcast and celebrating a bit of a milestone, but I got a lot to talk with you about, Mr. Alex Capecelatro, CEO over there at Josh. Appreciate you taking the time and calling in and diving into it with us today.
Of course, excited to be here.
Well, first of all, how you doing? I feel like I'm reconnecting with so many people in this industry, and you being one of them. How have you been?
I've been well. It's been a crazy year, a lot going on, dealing with tariffs, big birthday celebration, a lot of launches. It's just nonstop, but I feel like there's a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. And, for a company that put AI right in the name of what we do, this is kind of the year for us.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. And I mean, you mentioned that the anniversary, 10 years this year, big milestone. I can think back to early days, one of my earliest days in the media space covering this, and might have been a CEDIA in Dallas potentially, where you guys you were around for about a year, but I think it was like your first physical product launch was in 2016. So I mean, come a long way since then. 10 years feels like it went in an instant, but at the same time, it's been a while. So reflect on that. I mean, did you see kind of where you are today, being where you're at, and just how this company's evolved?
It's definitely been a different journey than we expected. We put AI in the name because we thought at the time there were a lot of great hardware products doing great lighting, cameras, security, HVAC, all sorts of things. But software was kind of lacking. We felt like bringing real good software into the home, using AI, using machine learning, it was going to disrupt everything. And I would say that is still true and it is happening. But it took longer than we thought. And in doing so, we realized probably about a year, maybe 2 years into building the company, software is the core of what we do, but we kind of need hardware. We need good microphones, good sensors. We now have touchscreens, we have remotes. And the way the landscape has shifted, lots of acquisitions and mergers and what's gone on in the consumer space, it is a different landscape than what we expected. But things are great. I mean, the last year alone, we doubled the business. Like things are moving.
Yeah. Bring us back to, I feel like 10 years, you probably still have a good recall sense of what it was like to launch, a company in this space. What was that initial sort of, you talk about it there a little bit, but dive into it, the reason for being and what you hope to accomplish and, how it all comes together.
It was funny. In the beginning, people didn't know what we meant when we put AI in the name. They were a little confused. They kind of, generally people weren't talking about AI. And then all of a sudden, Alexa and Google and Siri and all these other voice products come out and people said, oh, AI is voice. And we kind of said, well, voice is a piece of it, but we're using AI for a lot more than that. And it really took up until the launch of ChatGPT in 2022 for people to kind of understand, all right, voice is just a piece. There's also using AI for programming, configuring, for image generation, for the way that the systems are finding content. There's a lot of other aspects that have built into the AI side. And so for us, there was a lot of education in the beginning. There was also trying to figure out, how do we work with the business models that exist? I don't know if you remember this, we were one of the first to have a recurring revenue model. Back in 2015, maybe early 2016, we started off saying, hey, you can have a monthly plan, an annual plan, a 5-year plan, or for those who don't want a recurring fee, you can always buy it outright, have a more expensive option, but you just buy it once and you own it. And to date, we've seen companies that have tried all sorts of things. We've maintained that approach. We still you can have a low cost with a monthly plan that starts at $10 a month, or you can pay one time and own it outright. And what's interesting is other companies that took a long time to get into recurring revenue are now requiring it. And they don't understand that some dealers don't build a business where it makes sense for them. In other cases, it's kind of the way that, builders are going and other, aspects of the industry are going. So we've had a lot of educating and kind of figuring out how the channel works. On the business model, that's been really interesting. On the hardware side, that's been really interesting. But the other piece is partnerships are really critical to what we do. We set out saying, we want to be the brain of the home. we don't want to build all this stuff. So we work really well with Lutron, really well with Sonos, really well with Sony, Samsung, Autonomic, Roku, Apple TV, you name it, all these different partners. And that has been, I would say, more than 50% of the engineering work that's gone in over the last 10 years. And people don't think about that. It's not the shiny object. It's not the cool UI. It's not the voice command. But that's what makes all of this work is we need great partners. And our partners have gotten better and better over the years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot I want to unpack there. The one thing you mentioned is education, and those other elements, the other voice commands, the other software that has launched over the past decade since you guys came into the market, obviously help with that. Are there any just in the use cases of this or the implementation? What are the remaining hurdles you think as far as whether that's the consumer, the end user, or the integrator that's installing your product and your system? What remains that they kind of got to get over the hump with and understand?
I would say the biggest hurdle for us is not too dissimilar from a company like Tesla. Tesla came out with an electric car, really great features, but they were always touting self-driving from day one. And many of us have seen the headlines of Elon saying self-driving's coming in 2016, then 2017, then 2018, and it still hasn't quite happened. AI offers a similar conundrum where, similar to Tesla, they've got a car that is beautiful and it works well and it does what it needs to do. We have a control system that is beautiful and it works well and it does what it needs to do. But like that self-driving feature, people are hungry for pure AI, this idea that you don't do anything and it just auto sets everything up and it does all these routines and it automatically figures stuff out. That is not where we're at. We've got pieces of it. We have some really interesting automations and such. Just give me 1 second, catch my breath.
You're good.
But what we're finding that's so fascinating is if we get people to set proper expectations and demo to a client what the system can do today, clients are blown away. They're loving it. It is easier than any other system. It's quicker to set up. It does a lot of great stuff. But that setting expectations is where I'd say we still struggle because people get excited about the prospect. They get excited about where it's going. I get excited about where it's going. And we need to sometimes remind people where it's at is still pretty amazing. And let's focus on where it's going when that gets here. And honestly, every 3 to 6 months, we have new big updates. And with that, we bring a lot of great stuff. But the more that we get people to focus on, let's sell what's on the truck and not live in the future too much, like that, those are our best dealers and our best customers.
Well, what's funny is as you're talking in my head, I'm like, you guys were ahead of the game. It seems like when you launched and, you had a vision and an awesome one for where things were heading and what the possibilities were. It feels like we're certainly getting there, but at the same time, to your point, expectations have to be tempered. So there's like a fine medium of where we exist in the market right now that, it's interesting to see how integrators manage that on top of, the brands that operate in the space and even the end user and ultimately how, they see their AI experience in their home or, within this home automation space.
Totally. I mean, again, I think Tesla's a really good analogy because if I expected a Tesla today to be able to take me from my home to the office to somewhere else while I'm sitting in the back seat working on my computer, I'm going to think this is a terrible product. It is not doing that. They've talked about it. We know that's where it's heading. It's not going to get you there. The reality, though, is when you're driving behind the wheel and you put it in self-driving, like it is an amazing experience. Josh is no different. When you use Josh as a control system, you're using the app, using the touchscreen, using the remotes, using voice when it makes sense. It is an amazing experience. But we need people to think about, am I using it the way that it's currently built to deliver? Or am I trying to get it to do something that, quite frankly, it's not ready for yet? And I'll tell you, we see less and less of that. All of our new dealers, their expectations are better set. But we have dealers who they signed on in the early days of the business when we were probably more hype than reality at that time. And we get it. Like they don't necessarily have a hands-on experience with the product as much. And in their minds, they're still thinking, ChatGPT is amazing, Anthropic's amazing, Perplexity is amazing. is this the analogy of that in the home? The reality is you can ask Josh any large language model type question. It's going to do generative AI type stuff. But when it comes to putting your lights on, opening your shades, playing music, setting thermostats, we took a more cautious approach of saying we don't want to accidentally do the wrong thing. We don't want to intercept a conversation that isn't the right conversation and all of a sudden we lock you out of your house. So we're much more cautious than some of these other AI models because we're dealing with safety, we're dealing with security, we're dealing with just how comfortable you are getting around your home. And so if you give a command that is too abstract, something that doesn't quite make sense to the system, we default to not doing an action as opposed to doing the action. And trust me, we just passed, I think, something like 15 million successful voice commands from customers over the last couple of years. Like, people are giving a lot of commands to Josh to do things at work. But we didn't want to take the approach of saying, let's roll the dice, and if we're not sure, just do it anyway, because
Right.
that's how you get into trouble.
Yeah, that's where Josh, similar to Tesla, ends up on the news for reasons that you don't want to be, because the customer does get locked out of their house. But your point about experience too, offering that experience, and especially ahead of time. I've seen some great examples with Josh, with other systems that are out there, of an integrator that knows how. Obviously, it comes down to them having the capability and the real estate to be able to do so, but offering that sort of showroom-esque, or like if you've got a show home type deal where you can walk a customer through and really let them experience what the ultimate Josh experience is today, prior to ever pulling a wire or doing anything to install it in the home. That's the selling point right now, right? Is to let them walk into a home and throw that command out there and experience all of the bells and whistles that can happen to kind of blow them away. Have you seen some great examples or anything you can talk to about that, as far as that sort of the selling piece, or how to sell, Josh?
Yeah, so the funniest thing about it is what sells a customer most easily, hands down, every time we see this, it's true, is not focusing on the showroom in the demo space and all of that. It's visiting a client on their property, even if it's a construction site, walking through, talking about, would you like to be able to easily turn these lights on, close these shades, play music here, entertain in this space. And then when the dealer can pull out their phone and show the client, this is the Josh app that they have in their home or their showroom, and they show, this is how easily I can turn the kitchen lights on, open the shades in the living room halfway, get some party music going on the first floor, create a scene, whatever it is that they want to do. The client then feels much more at ease of, they use their phone all the time, they're comfortable with it. And in the phone, you do have a voice button, so you can show, using voice commands. Like if you wanted to say, we could easily set the lights to 4,000 Kelvin if you have color tunable lighting, that's something that they can demo right on the phone. We find that in the context of the customer's home is so much more impactful. The opposite of people bringing customers to their showroom and trying to kind of dazzle them with an amazing demo, the showroom is never going to be a true home. I've seen amazing showrooms, but it's still, more of a commercial space. And you end up trying to overdo these demos that aren't as realistic. Where if you're standing in someone's bedroom and you're saying to them, wouldn't you like the ability when you're going to bed to just give a voice command or press a button that says, good night? And with that, in the entire house, all the shades close, all the lights go off, all the music stops. If their fireplace is on, those turn off. If their TV's on, those turn off. The door locks, the alarm gets set. And all of that you're doing while you're stepping into bed, not looking for a switch on the wall, not using your phone that's plugged in the bathroom. Like, that allows a customer to really think about how they live with it. And so my big thing is try to get the customer in a headspace of their home, not the showroom as much. That being said, look, they're amazing showrooms. People want to show off stuff in action. I get it. It's cool. But when it comes to Josh, if you can use your phone as an example in the customer's actual home, you're going to win the sale every single time.
No, it's a really awesome point, because when you're able to, you have the, if you've got the UI right there on your phone, you can kind of walk them through and explain it. But doing it in that in their home, like that makes sense as a kind of an impactful way of saying, hey, here's where all of this is going to happen in this room with just the touch of this button or this simple command. So it personalizes it to them while still, you may not physically be seeing the things as they happen or as you're commanding them, but you can kind of visualize it, and it makes it so that they're in their space and they're visualizing it in their home as they would experience it.
Yeah, and the other thing too about that is the biggest complaint I hear from homeowners is my integrator ripping me off? Are they adding things I don't need? Are they pushing stuff that isn't going to make my life better, but they're just trying to sell me product? When you walk through a customer's home, you can really talk about, hey, in this room, if you want to have a surround sound audio experience when you're watching the TV, we're going to need to have speakers in the ceiling. We're going to need to have an amp. We're going to need to have, XYZ, stuff. It allows the customer to understand, oh, I'm not being sold stuff I don't need. I'm being told, if I want this experience, this is how we get there. And the other thing that kind of adds into this is I've seen some really cool demos. I don't know personally if the product is fully ready, but it's certainly getting there, from Portal, the company that does, proposals and invoicing and whatnot. And they're using AI where you simply walk around the project with your phone recording. You say, I'm in the kitchen. We're going to do, shades in 3 windows. And we're going to put in Rania lighting, and we're going to put in whatever stuff. And then now we're in the bedroom. And they take that transcription of the video and they automatically, using AI, turn that into a proposal. To me, if you're walking through the home with the client, using tools like that, using AI, you can create a proposal where the client has a better understanding of why you're putting these things on the invoice. And it doesn't feel as, potentially,
salesy.
Salesy,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Like for as cheesy as that word sounds, like that's truthfully what it is. And I mean it's almost like it kind of goes back to the heart of Josh and, it being a conversational platform, right? Like you're talking about these things as you're going through the home. And, it becomes like, oh, well, yeah, it certainly makes sense to have something like this here or whatever it might be. And so it just becomes a natural flow of, hey, this is what makes sense here. We're going to talk about this here, do this here. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you've got that full proposal. So I'm tracking, I see what you're saying, and it definitely makes a lot of sense. Switching gears a little bit, the talk of AI and the capabilities and that sort of thing. You mentioned a bunch of different, software programs or AI programs that are out there. And, kind of looping back to what we talked about before, where it's, it raises awareness amongst consumers about the capabilities of AI. My question to you, though, has it made it more complex at all? Because there are so many ways in which we're seeing AI implemented to then turn around and say, well, this is how we're using AI when you're talking to a customer or even to an integrator.
To me, it's all positive. The more that people are familiar with AI, using it in different ways, the more that they're comfortable, the more that they're just open to it and kind of expecting what's happening. I will say, for companies who might be listening, the most dangerous thing I've seen people do is to build some feature or some tool around a very specific AI utility that is going to become obsolete in 6 months. And so you want to be very careful about locking in on any one particular tool that you're building around, because AI is progressing so quickly. The way that we approach it is we basically do a lot of in-house AI tools, and then we work with various things out of Google, Apple, Microsoft, et cetera. And we build it in a way where we can easily slot things in and out, upgrade as needed. And it's really about making sure that we're not getting stuck in the AI of 2024 when we're moving into 2026. It's moving at that kind of a pace.
Yeah.
The other thing that gets tricky is we know that we're not going to be the ones to put everything out first. We've been pretty much first in this market for most aspects of AI, most things that we've done. But as AI is getting better, Home Assistant is doing things, people are hacking stuff together. We're going to see stuff coming out of Google Home, Alexa, Siri. Apple's working on maybe a device with a screen. And so we just want to make sure people understand this isn't, a situation where you should expect one company to deliver everything first. Our approach is always, we want to be safe and secure, and we want to be reliable. And if we're going to rush something out to just match something in the hacker community that puts people's data at risk, or puts their lifestyle at risk, that's not going to cut it. We're in homes of CEOs, celebrities. We're in the homes where people are very conscious of what microphones are listening, what the security is. We have a lot of really interesting properties where we need to be very careful about how we're handling things, what we're pushing. And to that effect, when we launched Josh.GPT, which is our generative pre-transformer model, we launched it as an optional add-on that was free. There was no cost associated, but you got a little pop-up in the app that said, new capability that we've unlocked. This is what it does. Would you like to enable it? Yes or no? And whatever you say, you can then go into settings and reverse it. So if you say, no, I don't want to do it now, next week, if you change your mind, you can go turn it on. Or if you say, yes, I want it, but you realize there's something here I'm not liking, you can go turn it off. That's been our approach in the beginning, because we know that customers, they just want a peaceful home. They want to feel comfortable. They want to be able to do things without worrying. And as much as stuff is evolving, we need to be very mindful that they're getting better features and benefits, but they're not moving into an environment where things are changing and they don't know how to stop it.
Yeah. To what you said about, how fast things move too, I can think back to just last week as we're sitting here talking today, to a conversation I sat through at a session. Actually, I think you had some interest in, if I remember the back end, listeners may not have seen it, but it was via little Instagram DMs around some AI applications that are out there. We sat and listened to Ari from Sonance.
Yep, Sonance.
Yeah. So, who was talking about the AI tools that he was using. And, to the point where he had admitted on stage, not a coder at all, but able to use some tools. I forget if it was like Notebook or one of these tools where he's actually able to create just like a little bit of code and turn it into an app that he's able to use just for whatever specific use case it might be. Like if it's, a great example was like leveraging job descriptions at a company of that size to, help organize thoughts or be able to quickly search through and see, hey, who's the, when you talk about roles and responsibilities and who you go to for what, a big challenge at a lot of companies. He created a little tool where you could dump all of those job descriptions into a tool like that and quickly just keyword search and find it, and boom, it was done. But then could delete it right away. So that's how, to your point of how fast things move, don't spend a lot of time, because tools like that exist where people are quickly finding use cases or solving things and deleting them, or, I guess potentially developing and creating a really cool tool for others to use. But at the same time, like that's the pace at which technology moves. So there is a lot going on, and why it is such an awesome time right now too to watch what companies like you guys are doing, and of course too, you mentioned the partnerships, a lot going on in that space to make sure that you've got a success or a strong support system around the product and what you're doing, and it's just been awesome to see over the last 10 years how it's grown. And speaking of those 10 years. I know we recently covered not too long ago you guys launching a special line of product, gold matted product. Am I saying that correctly?
Sort of. So
sort of.
Every year when we get to our birthday, we like to thank our dealers who have been supporting us. Yep. Without them, we would not have a business. We only sell through the dealer channel. And so when we were thinking about how can we show appreciation for our dealers, we did a couple things this year. The first thing is for the birthday month, every order got this nice limited edition gold Josh sticker that's just kind of a nice little piece of memorabilia. Then for orders that were over a certain amount, they got a Josh mug, because we had a recent winter launch event, and in there, it's kind of a funny thing, but a bunch of our team members in our office are drinking out of a Josh mug, and we had an overwhelming number of dealers saying, how do I get one of those? I want one. So we said, we're going to give these to people when they order through this month. And then orders over a certain amount got a free Josh t-shirt, which is always just a fun thing to do. It's a limited edition kind of 10 years of magic Josh shirt. And then we said, we want to acknowledge those dealers that they're just crushing it. They're pitching Josh in every project. They're really being great advocates. So for the top 5 dealers during this period, we had a contest where basically those who do the most business with Josh are getting a special limited edition Gold Josh 1. These are products that are not available for sale. They're not going to be in the store. This is a one-time thing. We're never going to make them again.
Yep.
And so those who get them, this is a very limited thing that allows us to just say, thank you for celebrating 10 years with us. Thank you for being great partners. And I can say we've basically just begun closing the books on this period. The 5 who are likely the top 5, which I can't yet announce, but we're getting close to, they are some of the best dealers that I've ever met in terms of they represent not just Josh, but all of their brands and the industry super well. They're very professional. They have great marketing teams. And when I look at the projects they're doing, if other dealers can learn from what they're doing, they're just exceptional dealers that I think are really crushing it. So I love that we get to show our thanks to them, and stay tuned because we're going to keep doing some more things later on in the year.
No, that's awesome. And I'm imagining by the time this drops, we'll be able to talk about it. I'm not going to have you say it now and then get us in trouble or anything like that, but we'll be sure, as that information becomes available, you can check the ResTech website, and we'll have it covered and shared out in conjunction with this episode when it does drop. But a lot of cool stuff going on. Excited to see, everything there. And before I let you go, there is, another aspect and element to kind of what you've done over the past 10 years that I wanted to talk about, and that's involvement with Cedia, a big part of kind of, your story. And I know recently we watched the group of you go down to DC for the 2nd annual Smart Home Day on Capitol Hill. So talk about that too, and the importance of, for you and for the brand to be involved with Cedia and everything that you have going on there.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to give back and really help try to move the whole industry forward. So years ago, I started volunteering for Cedia, teaching courses, helping out in different ways. That led me to a spot on the board. I ended up moving up to being on the finance committee, the governance committee, the executive committee. I was on the search committee that hired Daryl, and I am now currently the chair for Cedia. I do finish my chair position at the end of this year, and then for the next 2 years, I'll be the immediate past chair. But my work with Cedia has been just extremely rewarding because this is a tricky time. We have consumer products, we have CES, we have buying groups, we have other organizations, and Cedia is trying to make sure that we're providing value for members. We're helping to figure out how do we work with the government, how do we understand what's happening with tariffs. A couple of years ago, how do we navigate COVID? And so as much as it takes a lot of my time, I love what I do with Cedia because outside of Josh, I just want to help this industry thrive and grow. And I love seeing some of the things that we can work on the Cedia side.
Yeah, you picked an interesting time to be a board chair. You've mentioned some of those things you've gone through. That's quite the whirlwind of experiences, I'm sure.
I'm loving it. And we just the past year launched the Cedia Foundation, which is going to do a lot of great stuff. And smaller, but something that we're going to be pushing pretty soon too, is the 2nd annual Cedia Pickleball Tournament at Cedia Expo. So anyone listening, it was one of my favorite things about Expo last year, and we're going to be doing it again. So any pickleball players, definitely reach out because it's just a fun little thing that brings people together.
That's awesome. I know it got some great coverage, and I look forward to being there and witnessing, hopefully, as well. Hopefully no injuries. There weren't any injuries last year, right? Fingers crossed, but 2 years in, I know the more you do something, the more likely something is to happen. But, I think you got some pretty good, competitors down there and individuals that are, they'll have fun doing it, and we'll have fun watching for sure. But Alex, this was a ton of fun. It was great to be able to catch up with you and, check in 10 years in on the Josh.ai story and everything you guys have done. I know it's obviously made just consistent and regular news across this space for the past decade, and I know the decade in the future and well beyond it will as well. So appreciate you taking the time and look forward to catching up down the line.
Definitely. Thanks again for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Residential Tech Talks podcast, please subscribe to us on the platform you're listening on. Also, be sure to follow Residential Tech Today on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Residential Tech Talk. Lighting specialist to Residential Tech.
Home automation device, smart home or smart house.